Hey everyone, this is Andrew from Mann Lake, and this is our July edition of the Beekeeper's Buzz. If you've been following our videos since the beginning of the season, we've talked a lot about a couple different things. In the southeast, our brood levels are going to be higher at an earlier time, so we got to be aware of mites and be on top of it, typically earlier than other regions, in order to have our colony be as healthy as possible. And then, we're going to have, in the southeast, we're going to have a dearth really right now in this July and August window, where a dearth is a lack of both nectar and pollen. And we know that bees, it's critical for bees to have both in order to continue to grow. So we also know at this time in the year, there's a high chance that we need to be feeding our hives both some sort of dry pollen or a pollen substitute, as well as a syrup or sucrose to keep that hive heavy and full as it moves on throughout the year. So now we're in July, which is kind of this lull in our season, and it's a good time to kind of get into your hives and start thinking about, do I have an opportunity to have an additional hive? Now here we've got a couple hives, so we have our resources, but let's say that we've got one hive in our backyard. We may want to think about having that second hive, because if one needs a frame of brood or a frame of food or something, you have that other option to help balance out that hive. That's why most people recommend that we have at least 2 hives when we're working bees. But what we're gonna do here today is just talk a little bit about a couple options that we may have if we want to make our resource hive. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go into our hives and we're gonna make sure that everything is looking good, and that we want to check for adequate amount of brood. As we can see here, we've got some bee bread. We do have some eggs on the other side, but we're getting to a point in the year. Here we've got a beautiful frame of capped brood, and capped brood again, where we really need to make sure that we keep this colony growing. So we've really got about two frames of brood and lots of honey, and that's really it in this colony. This colony particularly would not be an ideal colony to split at this time. Yes, we've got 10 frames in here. We've got a lot of frames are built out, but there's about 5 or 6 of them are food, and the others are brood. And we don't have enough brood in this colony to take frames out of it in order to make a resource colony. So that's the first step. We need to make sure we know if we have enough in the particular colony to make an additional. We have no queen excluder on this. Our plan is to just let these bees come up into this box and continue to build out those frames. And if the queen lays up there, she lays up there. It's not a big deal. So let's look in this one. Now, we may come into one of our hives and see that we've got some swarm cells. And if we do, that's an opportunity perhaps to make a couple of splits. We may opt to just buy a queen. That's an option as well. If you want to plan it out. And then there's other things we can do, like walk away splits and let these bees make their own queens. But so we're going to come into this hive, and this hive looks really full. So here we've got lots of different stages. We've got capped brood. We can see some brood that's about to be capped. We've got some bee bread. I see some eggs over here on the peripheral. Now in here, you can see we've got a lot of pollen. These are fresh cappings compared to the darker. So these were just recently done. And you can see here we've got an adequate amount of pollen, but not a ton of brood. And that's to be expected right now. Just because we've got a lot of frames and our frames are built out, and you see here we've got a lot of uncapped brood in here. Both of these colonies are not ready to split on their own. And honestly, we couldn't really split any of these yet, and that's okay. What we're gonna have to continue to do is keep feeding these bees, put out some more pollen, continue to feed them their syrup while they're in this dearth, and make sure that our hive is prepped so we're able to capture as much of that fall honey flow as possible. July and August are a great time in the year to start to figure out, what does my fall look like? Because in the Southeast, unlike other regions, you still have bee season in the fall. Other regions are typically thinking about wintering their hive and buckling down and making sure everything is getting prepped for the winter. We don't have a traditional winter like some other regions, so we still have the opportunity to expand our apiary or fix up our beehive. So definitely make sure it's hot in the Southeast during July and August. We know that these bees are going to spend a lot of energy cooling. They're going to eat through a lot of stores. If we are not feeding these bees, then by the time the honey flow comes in, they'll be repairing themselves as opposed to storing honey, which is one of the things we want and we hope for as beekeepers. So I hope you guys learned a little bit, some things to think about for July. If you like, as always, click the like button, click subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos as we go through the season and try to help everyone be better beekeepers.